Hey everybody, it's me. How's it going? Today I'm sitting here at Hanging Rock Battlefield Trail Park, and it's just an awesome little trail over here near Salem, Virginia. And one feature that it has that is especially interesting considering recent events is it's got. Let's see if I can locate it here behind me. It's got the Confederate statue, so it's a looks like it's a bronze statue of a dashing gentleman with some nice boots and a cool hat, and he's pulling a sword out. And I couldn't quite make out what the inscription was on it. I think his last name is Jones, and it's a citizen soldier. But from the way he's dressed in the saber and everything, I'd say he's probably an officer in the Confederacy. And something new that I just noticed this week is that you can see those private property signs on each side of the statue now, which I guess is a response to um, the idea that lots of Confederate statues are being taken down, and you know maybe it's owned by private people that don't want to take it down. So that's back there. Behind it is the flagpole, and the flag on top of the flagpole is a field of white, and up in the left-hand corner is the stars and bars. The Confederate battle flag is on that. So um, I've been wanting to make a video for a while about, not just about Confederate statues, but about recent events and some ideas about history. You're probably pretty aware of arguments on both sides of the Confederate monument thing now. That on one side, people want to take these statues down because they're seen as symbols of oppression. They're seen as part of national movements in the past to keep people of color down and keep them from doing things like voting and owning businesses and getting jobs and things of that nature. On the other side of that debate, there are people that say that the statues represent their heritage because they have probably relatives and great uncles, great grandfathers that actually fought for the Confederacy. So they have a really personal connection to these monuments, and they say they've been up in some cases since the 1890s. A lot of them were put up around 1920. So if they've been there that long, then why take them down now? And to do that to them seems just like a destructive thing and not like a constructive thing. So I guess I have to give my opinion about it. Hey, everybody's got one, but when I was growing up in a small town, which is Pulaski, Virginia, we have a statue too. And when I was a little kid, I thought that statue looked just like my brother Frank, who is now deceased. And as far as I was concerned, as a 7-year-old kid or whatever, maybe that was him. I didn't know. It looked like him. And it was no particular individual from the way I understood that statue. It was just a statue to honor Confederate veterans, and there certainly were a lot of those in this area, including my great grandfather. Also, when I was a kid, I developed this fascination with the Civil War, and I think a lot of people did and still do. And when I think back about the reasons for that, it might have been the only time in history when areas like Pulaski, Virginia, like Cloyd's Mountain, were mentioned in a history book. It might have been the only time when a small southern town was ever on the map. And maybe even to this day, you don't see a lot of mention of places like Pulaski, Virginia as being an important part of history. But in the Civil War, it was part of it. And that really appealed to me as a kid, and of course all the movies and the books helped romanticize that idea of the lost cause. This idyllic southern life that was taken away by this northern invasion. coming up in this small town, I was exposed to a lot of ideas that I don't think were true. And some of these ideas I still see around today. And that was ideas like one thing I heard when I was growing up was the idea of the happy slave. That, yeah, the South had slaves, but some of the slaves were happy being slaves. They really enjoyed it. And that, that seems a little counterintuitive. There's an idea that slave owners didn't just own people, that they treated them like their family. But do you really treat your family like that? Would you buy and sell your family? Would you take your family's children away and sell them to somebody else? Would you breed them like cattle? If they ran away, would you send armed group of people out to get them and whip them and beat them, or maybe even hang them from a tree? Would you do that to your family? If you would, it's a hell of a family, isn't it? But that was an idea that I heard growing up. That some people given a choice would actually choose slavery because it was I don't know, it was great or something, but I don't think it was. You hear, the argument that the statues were about preserving history, and somehow if you take down the statue, it means that you're trying to cover up history or you're trying to hide it. But really, the way I look at it is the movement now that involves taking down statues is pointing out part of history that a lot of people don't want to face. It's very possible that the main reason that the South wanted to secede from the Union was that they enjoyed great wealth because they utilized an enslaved population to do that. If you don't have to pay your workers, well, you can rack some money up and you can have a big plantation house and you can have lots of power and political influence, and looks like that's what happened. But for some reason, we just don't want to face that. We don't want to face that truth. There's the idea that not many people owned slaves, but I think a lot of people did. And there's some studies that show up to, I think, 13% of the population of the United States in the early 1800s were enslaved. That's incredible. That's a very large number. And it wasn't just exclusively the South. There were also Northerners that owned people too. So I don't make it sound like I hate the South or anything, because I certainly don't. That's history. And if you claim to be interested in history, and if you claim to have a true interest in what happened in the history of the country, then one thing that you have to do is you have to look at some things that you might find unpleasant or offensive. Here's another thing that I heard growing up that I don't think is true, is that everything's equal now. Just because people were enslaved for 400 years, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and there were some problems along the way, but now everything's equal. But that doesn't really make any sense, does it? Because you're probably aware by now in your own life that wealth is generational. There are very few people that go from being in poverty to being rich in the course of one generation. Most of the time that wealth is built up, and the reason that people have opportunities to do things like get an education, go to college, get a good job, have some stability and a roof over their head is because that's something that their parents provided for them, and it's something that likely their grandparents provided for them. Over the course of 4 or 5 generations, that wealth can be built up. So we're not all starting from the same starting line. Yeah, technically, anyone can go out now and apply for a job, but we're not really starting at the same place, and it's a little, it's just not accurate to think that, hey, the playing field's even now, because it's still not, and we've still got some work to do. I imagine this video will, I don't think it'll make anybody mad. I think the people that didn't want to hear it would probably have already turned it off. And maybe if you didn't want to think about this stuff, you probably wouldn't spend this time with me right now. But I'm glad you did. I'm glad you stuck it out. That's not all I had to say tonight. But I was trying to think of some stuff in the car, and I just what came out came out. That's kind of how I am now, I guess. Anyway, I love every one of you, and I'll do my best to have you back anytime I can. And we got to face some things as a society in order to move on, in order to make America what we have always thought of it as and what we say it is. We still got a little bit of work to do. Hey, I'll see you soon.